The night at Atlas Base was colder than usual, the kind of cold that cut through uniforms and settled into the bones. Floodlights cast hard shadows along the perimeter, making every breath hang in the air like a secret. The team of snipers had gathered for their infamous drill, one that most called impossible, and the rest simply called cruel. Each took their turn at the firing line, breaths held, eyes straining through the icy darkness. But round after round went wide, the distant target untouched, the silence after every shot deepening the sense of defeat. Through it all, Mira Lowell watched from the edge of the crowd. She wore the plain fatigues of a signals tech, a cap pulled low, sleeves rolled tight against her wrists. She rarely spoke, blending in so easily that even the officers sometimes forgot she was there. Her hands worked quietly over a tablet, fingers gliding over data feeds no one else seemed to notice. She made herself small, but her gaze missed nothing. Suddenly the silence shattered. A single shot rang out, clean and sharp. The metal target at the far end of the range erupted, a perfect hit where no one had expected one. Heads snapped up, muttering, eyes darting from face to face. Sergeant Halston's voice boomed over the confusion, demanding, "Who broke formation? Step forward!" The world seemed to contract, every sound magnified. The shuffling boots, the wind tearing through the open yard, someone's nervous cough. When every weapon falls silent, who'll dare to break that silence? The challenge echoed, unanswered, as every set of eyes searched for the ghost in their midst. If you've ever proved them wrong, comment, "Not invisible anymore." Morning at Atlas Base was always gray, the sky pressing low as if to keep secrets from drifting away. The base itself clung to the northern border of Ryder, a nowhere place for men and women who felt they belonged nowhere else. Mira Lowell, at 39, had grown accustomed to being overlooked. Years earlier, she had led a drone recon unit, a role that required precision, confidence, and the ability to make decisions others would never have to live with. One decision in particular, a rescue mission gone wrong, haunted her. She had returned from that field changed, quieter, shifting to the shadows of technical work. She rebuilt herself behind the comms desk, content to track signals, reroute data, and keep her distance. But today, whispers moved through the barracks like a second wind. Who fired the impossible shot? Rumors painted Mira's name in the background, though most dismissed her as the least likely suspect. Among those who didn't was Reed Park, a rookie, younger by nearly 2 decades, his accent marking him as a child of immigrants. Reed's first weeks at Atlas had been rough. Lockers slammed, boots accidentally misplaced, muttered words about not belonging. Mira noticed, and in her own quiet way, stepped in. She fixed his comm unit after a training mishap, and when Reed mumbled thanks, she only shrugged. Invisible doesn't mean powerless. It was a small act, but it changed the current between them. Reed found himself drawn to the older tech, catching the rare moments when she smiled, seeing the way she watched the world instead of trying to be seen by it. Meanwhile, tension at Atlas Base grew. Command was furious about the breach of protocol and demanded answers. The word inquiry settled like a fog, and soon, everyone became a suspect. One by one, soldiers were called in for questioning. Mira sat across from the officers, answering each question with careful precision. She neither volunteered nor concealed. Her past was all in the records, but her present was wrapped in silence. Reed, for his part, tried to keep his head down. He noticed Mira's absence in the evenings, and one night, after lights out, caught sight of her hunched over a receiver in the comms tent, decoding a sequence of rapid, pulsing signals. He stayed out of sight, watching as she worked, only later realizing what those signals meant. There were villages not far from Atlas, small communities caught in the crossfire of old disputes. Mira had been relaying supply requests, coordinating drops of food and medicine, unofficial, unrecognized, but desperately needed. Reed saw the exhaustion in her shoulders, the burden she carried in every careful word. Days passed, and suspicion thickened. The sniper team grew restless, turning on itself. "If she did it, let her prove it, or get out!" someone barked in the mess. Mira listened in silence. Reed found her after, voice trembling with the courage of the overlooked. "We're not just here for ourselves," he said. She looked at him with something like relief, a small acknowledgement of the shared loneliness between them. But the command wasn't interested in empathy. Mira and Reed were ordered to attempt the impossible shot, publicly, under scrutiny, with everyone watching for failure. The night before, Mira sat awake, memories churning. The botched rescue, the names she still remembered, the feeling of running out of time. She traced lines across a battered notebook, planning for every variable she could not control. Dawn arrived sharp and bright, slicing through the fog. At the firing line, Reed stood beside Mira, heart pounding. The assembled company ringed them, faces blank and expectant. Mira steadied her breath, adjusting the scope, feeling the weight of 1,000 eyes and all the silence that lay between them. As she lined up the shot, her radio crackled, a garbled SOS, too urgent to ignore. She froze. Was it real? The signals spiked, then faded, then returned. Another voice, a villager's child, pleading for help. Mira made her decision in the space of a heartbeat. She stepped back, pressed the radio into Reed's hand. "You take the shot. I'll confirm the call." Reed stammered, "But—" Mira cut him off, voice calm. "Legacy is built on trust, not perfection." She sprinted toward the comms tent, radio hissing in her ear, her mind sharp and clear as she traced the signal's source. Reed crouched over the rifle, Mira's voice guiding him in his headset. Winds shifted left, quarter click down. "Wait for the lull, breathe. You can do this." Reed focused, heartbeat syncing with Mira's steady instructions. He fired. The shot echoed, metal rang out. The impossible target dropped. Across the field, cheers erupted. Mira's voice, steady and sure, confirmed. The emergency had been a false alarm, but a supply drop was now on its way. The command staff, stunned, watched as Reed stood and lowered the rifle. Mira rejoined him, both breathless. Their teamwork had saved face, and maybe lives. The villagers would get their supplies, the unit would keep its honor, and for the first time, Mira felt the ache in her chest begin to ease. Rumors faded quickly after that day. Mira was cleared of any wrongdoing. Reed was hailed for his composure under pressure, but some skeptics still muttered about luck and team tricks. Mira didn't argue. Instead, she acted. She volunteered to run the first Signals sniper rescue training, gathering recruits who'd felt invisible, outcast, or afraid. On a rain-soaked afternoon, during a surprise field emergency, she led the team to rescue a lost squad, her calm and innovation winning even Tessa Moreno's respect. Afterward, Tessa found her by the armory, smiling. "You didn't just follow the rules, you rewrote them." Reed, now more confident, offered to mentor new arrivals. Mira accepted, seeing the strength that had always been there, now shining where others could see. A small ceremony was held, simple but meaningful. Mira stood in front of the unit, pinning a badge on Reed's chest as the new signals sniper team formed up behind him. She spoke quietly, her voice carrying across the parade ground. No victory comes alone. Courage means lifting others with you. Around her, new trainees called her name, their voices clear over the comms for the first time. As dusk settled over Atlas Base, Mira lingered outside, listening to the laughter and chatter of a unit finally at ease. Her journey, from invisible to indispensable, was marked not by a single impossible shot, but by every quiet act of courage that followed. If you've ever found the strength to stand up, especially when no one was watching, share your moment of courage below. No one's invisible here. Night reclaimed Atlas Base, yet inside the barracks, the mood was lighter than it had been in months. There was a quiet pride that shimmered in small exchanges. A pat on the shoulder, a murmured, "Well done," a new openness between recruits who had once watched each other with suspicion. Mira found herself surprised by the ease with which people now called her by name. She moved through the halls less like a shadow, more like a presence, a part of the team, not just its background. Reed had changed as well. He had shed some of the nervous energy that marked his early days. Now, as he joined Mira in the comms room, he held himself with a confidence born of trial, not bravado. Their partnership, forged in crisis, became the quiet backbone of a new way of working at Atlas. The unit was still far from perfect. There were skeptics, always are, who clung to old ways and muttered about tradition. But the cracks in the armor had grown wider, letting in just enough light to see the possibility of change. A week after the impossible shot, Mira led her first signals sniper rescue drill. The recruits gathered at dawn, some bleary-eyed, some tense with anticipation. Mira mapped out the exercise with a mixture of calm and authority, pairing unlikely teammates and handing Reed the responsibility of guiding the most inexperienced group. Tessa Moreno watched from a distance, arms folded, a small smile on her lips. Halfway through the drill, word came over the radio. One team had gone off course and was now lost in the brush, struggling with a dead signal. Mira didn't hesitate. She coordinated the response, deploying search teams and guiding Reed's group through a maze of false leads and fading echoes. The operation became a lesson not just in tactics, but in resilience. Reed's voice, clear and steady over the comms, became the anchor for those on the ground. When the lost team finally emerged, muddy but safe, a cheer rose from the field. Mira's own hands shook, not with fear but with the adrenaline rush of seeing her students succeed. Tessa approached, her approval plain. "What you did out there, it's more than just protocol, it's legacy." Mira met her gaze, understanding the weight of those words. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel proud. That night, Reed sat with Mira by the fire pit at the edge of the compound, the stars sharp and brilliant overhead. He spoke softly. "I never thought I'd feel like I belonged here. You made that possible, you know." Mira shrugged, looking into the flames. "Sometimes it just takes one person to see what's invisible in the dark." "Maybe," Reed said, "but it takes courage to let someone else step into the light." The story of the impossible shot faded into the background, replaced by a narrative of teamwork and quiet heroism. Atlas Base became known not just for its tests of skill, but for the way its people cared for one another. New trainees arrived and found mentors in Mira and Reed, discovering that their stories, too, could shape the future of the unit. As the seasons turned, Mira found herself more at home. She no longer carried the weight of her past alone. Every day she saw in Reed and in the others the power of small, unseen choices. Courage, she realized, was not a single act, but a way of living, a willingness to risk failure and trust others. When the time came for a formal recognition, the unit gathered in the open yard, the flag snapping overhead. Mira pinned the new Signals sniper badge on Reed's chest as the company watched. Reed's parents had sent a message, a rare, precious call from home, expressing pride in a son who had found his own voice. Mira addressed the crowd, her words simple. No victory comes alone. Courage means lifting others with you. Around her, new voices echoed, strong and sure. She felt the ripple of that moment reach far beyond the base, as if every person who had ever felt invisible might hear it. She lingered afterward, listening to the laughter and easy chatter of a team no longer afraid of shadows. As darkness fell, Mira stood with Tessa at the edge of the field. "You know," Tessa said, "what you built here, it matters more than any record shot." Mira nodded, a quiet smile tugging at her lips. Sometimes, the hardest shot is letting go of who you were and trusting who you can become. If you've ever faced that moment, standing at the edge of doubt, daring to help someone else across, share your story below. No one's invisible here. The days slipped by, marked by small changes. Mira was up early each morning, her footsteps familiar on the metal walkways. Her voice now called out with ease in the briefing room. Reed developed a habit of staying late, reviewing radio logs, sometimes catching Mira at the comms desk, and sharing quiet jokes only they seemed to understand. It was in these in-between hours, when the drills were done and the official talk faded into the background, that the spirit of Atlas Base truly emerged. Some challenges persisted. There were times when a careless remark or skeptical glance reminded Mira and Reed of the invisible walls that could still exist, especially when news of their teamwork spread beyond the base. But neither shied from the weight of expectation. Mira, especially, had learned how to turn skepticism into resolve, her actions speaking for her when words would not. One evening, as a storm gathered on the horizon, Mira led a training session with a new batch of recruits, some brash, some nervous, all watching her closely. She demonstrated how to track signal flares and red wind shifts, making every lesson a blend of technical mastery and trust. Reed assisted, walking the line and offering encouragement, quick to spot those struggling and slow to criticize. During a break, a young woman named Farah hesitated at the edge of the group, radio in hand, brow furrowed. Mira approached, her tone gentle but firm. "What's on your mind?" Farah looked up, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "What if I make the wrong call? What if someone gets hurt?" Mira didn't rush her reply. "Everyone here has made mistakes. What matters is what you do next. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you need help, or let someone else take the shot." Reed joined them, echoing Mira's sentiment. "I wouldn't be here if I hadn't let Mira guide me. We're a team. Nobody has to do it alone." Farah nodded, tension easing. She stepped back to the group, this time with steadier hands. Mira caught Reed's eye, the silent exchange between them, one of mutual understanding and pride. Later, as the wind howled and rain battered the barracks, the recruits gathered in the mess hall. Reed found Mira sitting by the window, watching lightning split the sky. He slid a cup of tea across the table. "You know, when I first arrived, I didn't think I'd ever belong anywhere. I kept waiting for someone to tell me I was in the wrong place." Mira smiled, the lines around her eyes softening. "I used to feel the same, but every place becomes home eventually, if you're willing to build it and let others help." Outside, the storm raged, but inside there was warmth, a sense of belonging earned not by extraordinary feats, but by the steady, unseen work of showing up and supporting each other. When the rain finally stopped and the world outside was washed clean, Mira gathered her team. She announced the next day's drill, a rescue operation that would require everyone's input, not just the fastest or the strongest. "Remember," she told them, "what makes us strong isn't who fires the perfect shot. It's the courage to stand together, even when the outcome's uncertain." The drill the next day was demanding, pushing each member of the unit to their limit. Signals were crossed, supplies misplaced, tempers flared. But as the sun broke through the clouds and the last lost recruit was found and brought back to base, a cheer erupted, relief, pride, a sense that no one had been left behind. As evening fell, Mira stood at the edge of the yard, looking out over Atlas Base. Reed joined her, both of them quiet for a moment, sharing the satisfaction of a day well spent. "Do you ever regret staying?" Reed asked quietly. Mira considered. "Not anymore. I used to think I had to disappear to survive here, but it turns out, being visible, taking the risk to lead, that's the only way we ever change anything." Reed nodded, understanding more than Mira needed to say. So Atlas Base became a place where the invisible became indispensable, where courage was measured not by glory, but by every act of trust and support, by the willingness to take the hard shot or to let someone else try. If you've ever risked stepping forward, or if someone ever helped you find your place, share your story below. Because here, no one's invisible. Months passed, and with each new cycle of recruits, Mira's legend at Atlas Base took on a different shape. She was no longer seen simply as the quiet tech at the edge of the crowd. The recruits called her the steady one, and her stories of failure and perseverance became lessons quietly repeated in the barracks long after lights out. Reed's story, how he'd once felt lost, how a single act of trust had changed everything, was told and retold, always as a reminder that nobody succeeds alone. In time, a new sense of pride grew in the unit. Mira took care to never let it turn to arrogance. Every recognition ceremony, every new badge or commendation, she reminded the team that the hardest victories were often invisible to those on the outside. It was the courage to keep going, to admit doubt, and to help others along the way that mattered most. One morning, as the fog curled low over the firing range, Mira assembled her team for what had become a tradition, the Impossible Shot Challenge. But this time, it wasn't about outdoing one another or proving individual skill. Mira paired each experienced sniper with a new trainee, blending strengths and weaknesses, forcing everyone to learn and teach at the same time. As the drill began, the base was alive with nerves and anticipation. Mira watched as Farah, the once timid recruit, adjusted her partner's aim and whispered advice Mira had once given her. Reed was coaching another new arrival, showing him how to feel the rhythm of the wind, how to wait, and how to trust. A single shot rang out, followed by another, then another. Not every bullet hit the mark, but the cheer that went up when the first trainee found the center of the target was louder than any victory in months. Mira felt a surge of pride, not for the shot itself, but for the chorus of voices that erupted in support, for the confidence that spread through the ranks. After the challenge, Mira gathered everyone in the yard. She spoke not of perfection, but of persistence. Today, you proved that courage isn't just about the moments when you're watched, but about what you do when no one's looking. You helped each other. You learned from each other. And that's the legacy I want to see carried forward. The trainees clapped, some shy, some bold, and Mira caught Reed's eye across the group. There was a quiet understanding that this, more than any medal, was what they had been working for all along. That night, as the unit gathered in the mess for a small celebration, Tessa raised her glass and offered a simple toast. To everyone who dared to be seen, and to those who lifted someone else into the light. Laughter followed, warm and unforced. Mira allowed herself a rare moment of satisfaction, watching friendships deepen, seeing the invisible barriers of rank and background dissolve, if only for an evening. In the weeks that followed, Atlas Base gained a reputation, not just for sharp shooting, but for being the unit where new ideas took root, where teamwork wasn't just encouraged, but expected, and where every story mattered. Young soldiers who might have left in frustration or shame now found purpose in helping others, in sharing the lessons Mira and Reed had taught them. The base commander, once skeptical, began sending other officers to observe the changes. Some left puzzled, others inspired, and slowly, the culture of the wider force began to shift as well. One day, a letter arrived from Central Command, commending Mira and her team for exemplary integration of training, trust, and leadership under pressure. Mira pinned the letter on the notice board, not for herself, but as a reminder that every act of support, every risk taken to lift someone up, had echoes beyond what anyone could see. As spring arrived and the days grew longer, Mira and Reed walked the perimeter at sunset, the sky streaked with orange and violet. Reed broke the silence. "You ever think about what comes next?" Mira smiled, her gaze following the distant tree line. "There will always be another challenge, another person who feels out of place, another shot that seems impossible. But now we know. We never face it alone." Reed nodded, and together they watched as the lights of Atlas Base blinked on one by one, shining a little brighter for all who found their way there. If you've ever felt unseen, or if you've helped someone else find their voice, leave your story in the comments. Your courage matters. Like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear that even the smallest act of support can change everything. No one's invisible here. There was a morning at Atlas Base not long after, when Mira awoke before sunrise, the sky just beginning to pale at the edges. She found herself drawn to the old firing line, the dew shimmering on the grass, the world still and expectant. She stood in the hush, listening for distant echoes, memories of failures, doubts, and every impossible moment that had brought her here. She was not alone for long. Reed appeared, rubbing sleep from his eyes, clutching 2 steaming cups. He handed one to Mira without a word, and together they stood in companionable silence, the base slowly waking up behind them. It was in these quiet hours, Mira realized, that the real work of courage was done. Not in the grand gestures, but in the decision to return, to try again, to offer a hand or a word when someone else faltered. The new class of recruits gathered for their first briefing, their faces a mix of nerves and hope. Mira took her place at the front, her voice calm, unwavering. She shared not just protocols and procedures, but stories of doubt and recovery, of mistakes made and lessons learned, of the ways one person's courage can spark another's. She spoke of how the impossible shot had become possible not by luck or raw talent, but by trust, preparation, and the courage to let go. As she finished, a hand shot up in the back. It was Farah, her eyes bright. "Sergeant Lowell, did you ever want to give up?" The question drew a ripple of laughter, then silence. Mira thought for a long moment, then answered honestly, "Many times. But every time I almost did, Someone else's belief pulled me through. And that's why we're here. To become the ones who do the same for others. The day unfolded with drills and teamwork, laughter and a few stumbles. Mira watched as Reed quietly supported a struggling recruit, guiding him through a complicated maneuver. Tessa checked in with Mira later, a note of approval in her voice. This is what real leadership looks like. Not just authority, but faith. With each passing week, Atlas Base became more than a post or assignment. It became a refuge, a place where soldiers learned the value of persistence, humility, and helping hands. The unit's success was measured not only by targets hit, but by stories of resilience, by the willingness to ask for help, and by the strength to offer it. At the next recognition ceremony, Mira stepped back and let Reed address the group. His words were simple, heartfelt. None of us gets here alone. If you ever think you're not enough, look around. Someone here is ready to stand with you. And when you're ready, be that person for someone else. As the team broke up, new trainees lingered to ask questions, share worries, seek advice. Mira felt a quiet joy. The base was noisy with stories, laughter, the clatter of boots, a living echo of everything she once feared she'd lost. That evening, as dusk closed in, Mira stood one last time on the edge of the training field, watching the shadows lengthen. The impossible shot, the whisper of legacy, and every sacrifice faded into the steady rhythm of life at Atlas, a rhythm built on courage, not spectacle. And as the first star appeared, Mira whispered to herself, "No one's invisible here. Not anymore." If you carry a story like this, if you have ever doubted your place or lifted someone else to theirs, share your moment below. Like, subscribe, and remember, the bravest thing you'll ever do might be showing up again and again for someone else.